Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
We have a very important episode to do today. And because of that, we have a very important guest. We've brought in the big guns. We have Carrie Church, the Backyard Professor. How are you, Carrie?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking me to be on your show. This will be fun.
I think fun might be an understatement. We cannot think of anyone else that we would like to delve into this topic of today's episode with. Now, I asked Carrie he's basically a man that needs no introduction, but I asked him if he could send me a bio, and he basically sort of sent me a sort of bio. Why don't you read it very quickly, Landon, in case there's anyone in the stratosphere who doesn't know who the Backyard Professor is?
Yeah, I think this bio more describes Carrie's personality than Carrie. So he said he's born and raised Mormon. I helped found FAIR when the internet came along. I was with them for several years, went AWOL, and showed back up recently. Only this time I came back on the right side.
It almost sounds like a movie trailer, right? If you read it in a movie trailer voice. On the right side. Anyway, we are going to have fun today. We are absolutely thrilled to have Carrie here. And when you understand what our topic is, you'll see why Carrie's perfect, because he is somebody that has been on both sides of this situation that we're going to discuss. So it's absolutely perfect. So thank you again, Carrie. We cannot wait to dive in. So we're going to let Landon kind of take it away from here and tell us what we're talking about and why.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about a new website. It's a website that just came out within the last month. It's called Answering LDS Critics. And when we saw this website and some of the articles that were on it, we just said, we've got to do something on this because it is just so true of apologetic research, of apologetic excuses, and their ability to say, oh, all the problems in the church are related to the critics of the church. It's not that the church is doing anything wrong. It's that the critics are. And so they made a website specifically to answer the criticism that they're getting from the podcast community, from the post-Mormon community, from the post-Mormon thought leaders. In fact, this is their actual mission statement or their reason for creating the new site. They said the LDS Church has faced accusations about its history and practices for years, but amplified recently by the internet. What motivates LDS critics? Do they seek to help people find Jesus Christ or distort the truth for financial gain? Are they intentionally sowing doubt to profit from shaken faith? This website investigates the strategies and motives of these critics, empowering you to challenge their claims and strengthen your testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so with the rollout of this, they produced their first, I guess you'd say their first article. And this is their first article.
I'd like to ask Carrie, out of the gate, what do you think of that mission statement right out the door?
I honestly think that mission statement is silly. And the reason why is it's not us who are causing faith to be lost. It's not us critics. If the church were truthful, faith wouldn't be able to be lost. That's my first impression.
I love that. It's like truth is a lion, set it free, and it will defend itself. No website needed.
I thought of a statement today while I was driving at work, and it goes something like this. Truth, how did I put that? If truth is not your ally, then it is your enemy.
Beautiful. Well,
I love that. Let's sell t-shirts. Oops. We'll get into that later, won't we?
Uh-oh. Careful. We're looking for the money.
Careful.
We're looking for the money. That's right.
Well, that's exactly what they said with their first article. Is they went right after the critic, because obviously you don't go after the truth. You go straight to the truth teller. You attack the person that is giving the message. And so they created this great headline: the more faith they shake, the more money they make.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Kerry had a great thought on that when he heard it just off at the top of his head. Go, why don't you tell everybody, Kerry? He's laughing too hard.
Hilarious. Okay, let's turn that statement around then. LDS apologetics: the more faith they make, the more money they take.
There it is.
And
I mean, that's a reversible concept right there.
Absolutely. And if you're going to say one, you got to say the other. So if one side's making money and that's evil, then the other side making money's got to be just as evil, as far as I can see.
Well said.
Definitely.
And I was going to say, just to kind of explain, this website is going to cover all kinds of different apologetics. There are tabs all over it to different topics that you would expect, but this is their first published article right on the first page. They're going to take on critics that make money off of faith crises. That's the first thing, the most important thing at the launch of this website that they are going to take down.
And we'll say right from the start, we encourage anyone to go look at this website and read the articles that they've written, and then compare those to the articles that you're seeing by what they like to call the critics. We like to call, post-Mormon thought leaders. Go and look at the information put out on the various websites, the various podcasts, and compare it to their answers and make a choice. We're not afraid of that. If in the end you think that the information they're putting out is correct and true, by all means follow it. We're simply saying we're not afraid to have our cause challenged, and vice versa. Why are they afraid to have theirs?
Well said.
We're going to jump into this. It's not a very long article, so we're actually going to read the article, and then we'll go back and forth and we'll comment on the article as we go. So we'll start out. Carrie, do you mind reading this? This is right out. This is their first paragraph, and the chart here is also one of the charts that they produced. So you want to go ahead and read that?
Yeah, Mormon Stories Foundation. Mormon Stories Foundation, aka Open Stories, is one of the most prominent of LDS critics. They're already wrong. It's not one of the most prominent. It is the most prominent.
Yes, absolutely.
There are over 1,600 videos from that organization alone on YouTube, comprising over 60 million views. Mormon Stories is a nonprofit organization called a 501c3. The U.S. government requires nonprofit organizations to file an IRS Form 990 every year, which is made available to the general public unless you're the Mormon Church. Oh, whoops, no, that wasn't it. The IRS...
Kerry's adding his own comment.
That was added.
Sorry, that's my comment. Sorry. No, I'm not. But the IRS 990s contain important information, including the entity's total contributions and salaries. Mormon Stories 990s are available from 2013 to 2020. First, let's look at Mormon Stories IRS reporting for 2020.
Okay, and this table off to the left is an extract from the IRS Form 990 for Mormon Stories. Which
they have published on their website. Let's make that clear. Yes. In this article on this website, they have pulled down the financials for Open Stories Foundation, and they are delving in and dissecting them for everyone to see.
They are going to dig into these financials, and they're going to tell us why them making money it leads to the distortion of truth in the church, and why it leads them to be able to lie to you with the information that they give to make these huge dollar figures that they're bringing in. According to their article. So the red circle here, this is actually their red circle. They put this on here. And so what they're showing is that total revenue in 2020 for Mormon Stories was $511,000. That's total of all their contributions. That would be from any YouTube money that they made. That's their total revenue. Of that, they had $390,000 in expenses, and their net income was $120,000 that they basically netted, which because they're a nonprofit then can go back into the business to, buy additional or to grow the business. The thing that they really want to point out to you here is the executive compensation. They make a huge deal out of the fact that the executive compensation totaled 55% of the overall revenues for the company. And this somehow is, the devil's tool for leading all people into apostasy. So we'll go ahead. We'll go to the next slide here, and we'll have Rebecca read that one.
Okay, and I'm going to read off my mimeographed copy, so I don't.
True
The
librarian.
slide is so small. That's right. I'm a true librarian. That's it. Okay, so this is called Mormon Stories Revenue. And it says, you can see that Mormon Stories is reporting $511,117 in contributions for 2020. Contributions from prior years are listed below. The average growth rate over 7 years in contributions was a whopping, that's their word, whopping 22.9%. If we apply that rate to estimate revenue for 2023, the contributions total around $949,000. Even if we just use the last reported percent increase of 10.1%, their contributions would still total nearly $700,000 in 2023. Mormon Stories may suggest that this donated money is going to help people deal with their faith crises, but more than half goes to the CEO. See below, it says. Also, based on their website homepage, Mormon Stories helps, and that's in quotes, helps people by introducing them to other videos to, again in quotes, help the person know they are not alone, close quote, in their faith crisis, which increases revenue, offer conferences, which increases revenue, and offer one-on-one coaching, which increases revenue.
There you go. So I'm gonna go to the next slide, which is really the same slide here, but in this case, this is I've highlighted the sentences that I want to key in on, and then I've circled some of this information here. So first of all, you'll notice that this is typical. They're going right to the heart of what apologetics do, and that is they completely distort the truth. So he says. We know that we've got $511,000. We have the 2020 Form 990 that says exactly how much they made, but they don't have the 2021, 2022, 2023. So they decide that they're going to use a 7-year rolling average, determine that they grew at 22.9%, and say, we can say pretty confidently that Mormon Stories is now revenuing $949,000. They didn't get that number from anywhere. They're just extrapolating that number from the 22.9% growth.
No, they said whopping. I think
A
whopping is an actual
22.9.
increment of increase. Whopping. I think it's a real measure of finance.
That is correct. And if it's a stock, you might be able to say, oh, we're using a rolling year average to determine stock, how it's going to perform over time. But we all know that you can't look at a stock at its peak and then say, oh, it's always going to keep going at that same rate. First of all, Mormon Stories was one of the original Mormon apologist podcasts. In fact, it was an apologist podcast when it started, and then it became a critical podcast later as truth began to roll out, and they started rolling that out. So there's a couple things to notice here. On that. First of all, you'll notice that 3 of those years that they quote had 29.6, 67.9, and 36.7% growth. So for 3 years, they had whopping growth. I guess you could call it whopping growth, 67% growth. But the other years, 14, 5.6, minus 3.3, 10.1. And the last 3 years up to that point was 5.6, minus 3.3, and 10.1, which is, if you average that out, would be single digit growth. And so if you extrapolated from there, you'd get much less than 900,000. They even said, well, if we use the 10.1, we're at 770,000, but there's no indication that it necessarily grew at 10.1 either. So why not just use the 2020 numbers for your argument? Why are you extrapolating, trying to make it seem like they made way more money than they did, or that we know that they did. They're not basing this on fact. They're basing it on an extrapolation that they used via math, using years that clearly saw the greatest growth in this because, and we'll talk about it in a minute, why those might be. They attribute
I feel like it's similar to membership numbers.
yes, absolutely. That they keep growing and then they change how they account for them to show that they're growing.
I feel like that's just how they do their accounting, and that's what they're doing here. So,
and that's why I say here, even if we, they say even if we use the reported 10.1%, the last one, it would be worth 700,000 in 2023. So they're really growing this, trying to show that it's huge numbers, but these may not be actual numbers. It may have declined 5.6%. And really the number might be 400,000. We don't know. We don't have the return. So why are we trying to guess? Let's just stick with the numbers that we do have. He also, he says that Mormon stories suggest that this donated money is going to help people deal with their faith crisis, but more than half goes to the CEO. He goes on to say that they're producing videos, they're producing conferences, they're having one-on-one counseling sessions, and all of this makes them money because they're producing this stuff. So evidently, the church is allowed to have a general conference, a stake conference, a ward conference, youth conference. They have every conference in the world. They have summer youth camps. They can have all of these to build community, to help their members. But when someone has a faith crisis and can't get help from the church and they go looking for another community, evidently they're not allowed to do that through conferences or through counseling. Like you might go to a bishop and get one-on-one counseling. You're not allowed to go to anybody and have one-on-one counseling. You're not allowed to do any of these things as a post-Mormon, because if you're doing that, you're stealing from these people. You're taking advantage of their faith crisis to make money. Meanwhile, the church is calling you into tithing settlement, asking you if you've paid your 10% so that you can go to their conferences and their temples and be called as a bishop and have the one-on-one counseling that they provide. So I see absolutely zero difference here, yet they're using this as a bad thing, that there's a group out there of podcasters, of post-Mormon thought leaders who have seen a need, they've seen a hurting community, and they've built conferences, they've built counseling, they've built communities that people that are hurting, that have been cast out of their community, can go to, and yet they want to say that that doesn't help people. It only helps people if you're inside the church.
well, and I'd also like to point out that you can get all of those resources without paying a single dime, because you can watch any video, you can get advice. I mean, everything is for free. Like, for example, Carrie and his wonderful podcast, people can donate to him, but if you don't, you can still watch all the wonderful content that's out there. What do you think, Carrie, on this slide?
I think, quite frankly, that the the post-Mormon communities thrive.
Ironically, yes.
Yes, and I say that deliberately because that's one of those conferences that we all love to attend, and it is spreading. So this theme is just, it gives me the appearance of ad hominem and sour grapes. They can't defeat us on the arguments, so they complain we're making too much money, as if that's a bad thing. I honestly don't see that as a bad thing. If they wish it to be a bad thing, that's their approach. From our approach, you're welcome to donate to us as much as you want. You're also welcome to not donate to us as much as you want, but we are still going to keep producing quality, good, open context productions where we include the parts that the church has left out. That's what we're doing here.
Well said. Yeah.
Well said. Exactly. Yep, that's right.
I want to point out, he makes this sound as if Mormon Stories is the one who's making the growth of this fund. And I want to point out that the 3 years that they happen to point out as the biggest growth, it doesn't appear that it's what the post-Mormons are doing that's driving the giving. I would argue that it's what the Mormon Church is doing that's driving the giving to the post-Mormon world. If you look at what happened over these time frames, you look at the giving in 2013, 2014, that's when the release of the Gospel Topics essays came out. Now, they rolled those out over, 1 or 2 years, and they hit them. So it took a while for people to even know they were there and to start reading them and for the word to get around. But it was right around that 2015 time frame when people really started catching on to these Gospel Topics essays, going, what's going on here? This isn't the church that I grew up in, and started having the faith crises that we see happen.
Look at that jump in the percentages. And my suspicion, if I may briefly add, the first response to those gospel topic essays from the Mormon people on the internet, the first response was, oh my gosh, you guys, the anti-Mormons have hacked the church's website. We have to warn them. There are essays on polygamy and the blacks and the priesthood and the Book of Abraham and the Book of Mormon translation, and they are anti-Mormons. They are destroying the church's image. We have to warn the church. Now, honestly, what does that tell us?
I 100%
it tells us
agree.
a lot. And we also know that people got in trouble from leadership for using those essays that they found on the church's site in their lessons and discussions. No one knew they were there. And as they started to trickle out, people were horrified, as you said. So I think that could have something to do with the growth there. There's this sense in this whole article that everyone is just sitting innocently in the pew until a post-Mormon thought leader somehow reaches in, yanks them out, and then demands money and shakes their testimony. I would make another argument. Having run the Good Book Club for 3 years, talking to probably well over 100 people that have left, I've never run into anybody that didn't find somebody at church that caused questions, something they could not get an answer to, had a negative experience trying to get answers, and then finally went outside of the church construct to look for an answer. I've never run into anybody that came across something and went the other direction. So, but those are just the people I talked to. So interesting, the perspective here. All right. Are we ready for the next one? Have we finished this one?
Yeah. So the next one is that they tend to bring up is that John Dehlin was excommunicated in 2015. And he's obviously the biggest thought leader and the leader of Mormon Stories that they're talking about. And they make it sound as if, he was excommunicated so that he could draw all these people and make money off of his website. And that's why he was excommunicated. But it should be pointed out.
Publicity ploy.
Yeah. So boy, he's smarter than we give him credit for, I guess. But we need to point out that John Dehlin, first off, started as an apologist. He started a podcast that was apologetic, favorable to the church. He was trying to help people who had faith crises stay in the church. That's how I actually ran into him, was when I was having doubts. I was looking for, okay, I've got doubts. I don't know that I believe all this, but my family's in the church. How do I stay in the church? And I found articles by John Dehlin. And then like a couple of weeks later, he's excommunicated.
And these were articles that were apologetic, that were helping you to have doubts and still remain in.
That was truly the historicity problem that the church had. But then in 2015, they introduced the social issue. And that was the November 2015 policy where children of anyone who was a homosexual that was living with another partner could not be baptized, could not progress in the priesthood, and couldn't enjoy any of the blessings. And that social issue really caused a lot of people to turn away from the church. There was mass resignations from the church. And all of that happened in November 2015. So if you look at this graph, 2016 2017, those were the big years. Those were where the money giving really
Wow.
gave. They repealed that policy in 2018. And what do you see? The numbers come down.
Yep, they come down.
Oh,
That's right.
Landon, that is a terrific find. Look at that.
So was it
Now,
John Lynn and the podcasters causing the problem, or was it the church's own policies that were driving people away from the church? You know, it's hard to say just from those numbers, but you can make an argument that it's the church's policies that are driving people away from the church, because Mormon Stories wasn't doing anything differently that would have accounted for a 60-something% increase. It was what the church was doing that was making the difference there.
It was the catalyst, and then they were addressing those things, and people had to go elsewhere for answers, I believe. So, this is an interesting slide too, isn't it, Landon?
Yeah.
Let's go through this one. I think it's Carrie's turn to read.
Oh, Carrie, you want to go ahead and read that?
Yes, Mormon Stories CEO salary. Mormon Stories CEO made a shrewd decision in establishing the organization as a nonprofit. This label implies that no one is personally profiting from proceeds or donations, but the reality is the board of directors of a nonprofit entity may grant the CEO a raise if they so choose. In the case of Mormon Stories, the CEO received a raise in 6 out of 7 years between 2013 to 2020, and in 2018, his salary nearly doubled. The IRS 990 reports indicate that the CEO of Mormon Stories' salary increased from $89,000 in 2013 to $215,000 in 2020. It is unlikely that donors realize that more than 50% of their donations goes into the CEO's pocket. On 2/27/2022, the Salt Lake Tribune did a story on the Mormon Stories CEO and his salary. 2 interesting quotes from that report. Yearly revenues jumped by 67% in the aftermath of Mormon Stories podcaster CEO name. 2015 excommunication from the LDS Church tax form show. CEO's name. Annual compensation ballooned by more than 700%, according to nonprofit tax reports, swelling from $27,429 in 2010 to $236,021 in 2019. That 6-figure salary made up 60% of the group's total earnings from donors and podcast revenues. The fact is, this nonprofit business has been extremely profitable for the CEO of Mormon Stories. His business is literally destroying wonderful members' faith for money and leaving trauma, strained family relationships, and heartache in its wake. It's a numbers game for Mormon critics. The more faith they shake, the more money they make.
And that bold is theirs, not mine. So again, I'm going to this slide, and we're gonna hit some of these things. The first thing you noticed was he said the Mormon CEO made a shrewd decision to set up as a nonprofit organization.
Doesn't the church do that?
The church itself is a nonprofit organization. Every one of the apologetics website is a nonprofit organization. The Boy Scouts of America is a nonprofit organization. The Red Cross is a nonprofit organization.
Right. But in this case, it's shrewd.
It's shrewd.
Evil. Shrewd.
So the church is shrewdly set up not only as a nonprofit, but as a religious nonprofit where they don't even have to report anything of their finances of their $100 billion investment fund. So they say that nonprofit means that nobody makes any that nobody personally benefits from it, but it doesn't say that you can't have a salary, and that's exactly what this is. It's a salary, and many nonprofit organizations have highly paid CEOs. The Boy Scouts of America, their CEO makes it's $800,000, maybe even more than that, because successful high-paying CEOs bring in large donations. And so they're looking for people who have influence, who can bring in large donations. And when they find someone who can make a large donation, they pay them a salary that keeps them there to bring in the donations. And as a result, you get better content, a better organization. And that's exactly what you see. You see that the people with the highest paid people are going to produce the best quality content. And that's what you get with Mormon Stories. You're getting the highest quality content because you have someone who's working full time on it, somebody who can afford to fly somebody in to be a guest, to answer questions. They can call on big names, as Rebecca's learned working with Mormon Stories as running their book club. She doesn't get paid for it, but she knows that she can pull in big name authors because John Dehlin has a big audience and Mormon Stories has a big audience, and you can pull in big name authors to come and address people. So that's not a bad thing to have a paid CEO with a reasonable salary. The one thing I noticed in there, they started off in 2013 saying, he made 89K. Now, how many CEOs, if they made 89K, would you say, woo, that guy is raking, he's milking everybody? I mean, 89K for a CEO is peanuts. That is not a CEO salary. And when you go down to the Salt Lake Tribune article, you see that his salary, they talk about it swelling. It swelled from $27,000. Would you consider $27,000 a CEO compensation? No, he started at $27,000 because he built the organization. He took it from 0 views to 60 million views. He starved. He went hungry for years to make this grow. And now he's finally making up for it with a salary in the $200,000 range, which he worked for Microsoft and was probably in that range when he left there to become a psychologist. So for a CEO that's working full-time to earn an income, most of this not from donors, 60 million views on YouTube brings in a lot of that money. So a lot of it is simply from the content that he produced, and then part of it's from the donations that he got. The average salary for a startup CEO in the US in 2020, I looked it up, was $142,000. So half the time John Dehlin was way below that. Part of the time he was above that. He's right about where he should be for a startup CEO of an organization. There is nothing wrong with this salary. And this last one here, extremely profitable. We saw that the, $215,000 for a salary is enough for someone to sell their soul, evidently, but $200 billion for a church organization is not considered extremely profitable.
Oh, well said, my brother. Holy cow, that's a good point. Yowzer.
Rebecca, what do you think of that last sentence? What?
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. I just, that whole idea, I can't read it because I don't have it, but wonderful members' faith. Again, people are not sitting in the pews. Suddenly they feel this pull to go out onto the internet. No, they're sitting there and they have questions like you, Landon. You read something in a church manual, in the scriptures itself, that started you thinking with a question, and you went to leader after leader for an answer, and there was nothing. You searched for other people that might be able to help you, or at least understand what you were going through. And you did that for years until you finally came across, some websites where there were some answers. And by answers, yeah, Mormonish, that's it. No, we have no answers. No, but and again, most of these post-Mormon thought leaders, they're just putting out information, most of it taken from sources from the church's own writings and websites. And sources, are you kidding me? You cannot say anything in the post-Mormon world without citing your source. I learned that the hard way. You can't just say something. Everybody jumps on you with pitchforks and says, what's your source? Where'd you find that out? I mean, talk about your armchair scholars. Everybody is. And the other part of that sentence down there that bothers me is where it talks about strained family relationships and heartache and pulling families apart. I mean, like Carrie mentioned before, that is not happening because people are searching for answers from questions that develop in their faith. There is nothing on the side of post-Mormons that say you cannot be with your families. That's the doctrine on the other side, that you cannot be with your family. What do you think, Carrie?
Well, if I could add another point, this actually sounds like the Jeremy Runnels situation too. Did he not seek for answers?
Yes.
And the CES man promised him, "Oh yes, I'll get right back with you. I will answer every one of these weak, ridiculous questions you have. Wonderful. Yes, give me your best shot." So Jeremy did, and he never heard back from him. When he went to his bishop leaders, they turned a cold shoulder on him. And then they turned around and threatened him when he put it out on the internet. Well, if the church isn't going to answer it, what about the rest of people? Here's my other point that needs to be said. And we here in this podcast, us three together, are not seeking to denigrate the church.
Mm-mm.
However, who is it that's sending 60,000 to 100,000 missionaries out annually to teach the other churches to have doubts about their faith? And who's breaking up the families? When the wife agrees to the doctrine and decides to want to get baptized, and the husband says no, they go ahead and baptize the wife. Or if the kids, they did when I was a missionary. I've heard that somewhat changed now, so I need to update. I admit that. But man, that was the policy. You get those people in the water of baptism. We were baptizing 14 and 15-year-old kids with their parents' consent, but the parents did not join. We were baptizing husbands who decided, and then there was a very tragic case where we did baptize the husband. And I had gotten transferred. I learned 6 months later that his wife divorced him because he was always Mormonizing on her. He was telling her how glorious the church was and all. Our efforts broke that family apart. So for these guys to say, well, John and the rest of us are destroying wonderful members' faith, may I ask that if our information is really this bad, logically and historically and doctrinally, and if it is nasty, and yet it's wrecking these people's faith, then what value is that faith? If their faith was strong, if they really did believe they had the truth in the church in the first place, they wouldn't find us all that convincing now, would they? And yet
they wouldn't look for us.
They
wouldn't even look.
bother to look for.
There'd be no reason to
They
look.
would run across an anti-Mormon site and they would immediately say, no, I'd rather go play a video game.
Yeah.
Instead, they stop and do what? They read carefully. Now, why is that if they're getting all their faith and answers from the church? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And the problem I have with this is the strained family relationships that people leave their faith all the time and their families don't fall apart. It happens all the time outside of Mormondom. But Mormondom teaches if you let that one out of your family will no longer be sealed as a unit. You have lost part of your family. You must pull them back in at any cost. And as a wife, you've lost your eternal companion, and therefore your whole family is at risk. And it tears your family apart when they see their husband, or vice versa. You see your spouse leave the church.
Excellent
And that
point.
is their doctrine that is tearing the church apart. When one person exercises that free agency that we're taught and says, I don't believe in that anymore, but you're not free to do that because you now destroy your family under Mormon doctrine. And
boy, don't they tell you that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. They tell you that. And so it's not the post-Mormon world that's putting the strain on the family. It's the church's doctrine that if they leave, your family is torn apart. And
what's making all these people look for answers in the first place that are within the church? I would propose look at Jeremy Runnels' experience. Right. I would propose look at Landon Brophy's experience. I would say look at my experience. It's because there were no answers forthcoming. Oh, well, that's not a good, well, we've answered that, or you need to improve your faith. It was always pointed back to us as being our fault that we were losing our faith because we weren't getting any good answers. So.
And I would say that there was a talk given recently that Mormonish covered, and Carrie covered, and RFM covered, and Renee Steelman covered, and Nemo covered, given by the church historian, where he literally said, looking or finding answers is not the answer. Now the narrative seems to be, you have questions, forget it. You don't even look. Looking for an answer is not the answer. There's a reason so many of us covered that. If you guys have not looked up this talk, it was given at a BYU Idaho devotional a couple weeks ago. And like I said, many podcasters have covered it quite well. So, yep, don't find those answers. All right. Do you want me to read the next one, Landon?
If you could.
I know. We're just like stop on it every slide. There's so much to say. We may hit Mormon stories level. Do you think we can, as far as time-wise? I don't know if we
Absolutely.
We're in it to win it here. Okay, so again, I'm reading from my paper. But that's not all. Other income sources. Okay, so before we talked about donations, that kind of thing, but there's more. Outside of heavily soliciting donations, from two different YouTube channels, Mormon Stories Podcast and Understanding Mormonism, for which they get paid by YouTube for number of views. Online estimates suggest 6,000 for every million views, which would be about $360,000 in revenue. Mormon Stories also charges a hefty fee for one-on-one coaching for these groups through a faith crisis. Their fee, $200 per hour, according to their website. This fee is literally to help you through a faith crisis, which they have themselves have helped cause. Can I just stop there for a minute and kind of growl?
By they mean the podcasters, not the church or the members.
John. Well, no, I might read it that other way. That's accurate. Yeah. So they're basically saying that the podcasters have caused this crisis and now they're going to make money off it. It's a huge conflict of interest. Because they're a nonprofit, they can and do also receive grants. They also hold conferences wherein they charge attendees fees for attendance, which brings us to the critics' revenue cycle. Now, this is a very revelatory chart that we've been studying for days now, isn't it, Landon?
It is, and we'll get to that. I wanted to just bring up a couple of these. First off, you'll notice 360,000 of their estimate of that 581,000 then would be that's John DeLynn is earning that without asking anyone. It's all from advertisers on YouTube.
That is such a good point. He is not asking people to donate. He is simply getting it through any method that anyone put content on YouTube does. And everybody gets that kind of, when they have those kind of views, they get that kind of revenue. You are not doing anything but your job of creating great content to get that revenue.
My views are so low. I only make $1 a month. So he's doing pretty good with his views.
Oh no, we can top that. We'd love to have some donations, but Landon and I can't figure out how to add a donate button to our. We need to find a post-Mormon teenager to help. We literally can't figure it out. We'd love to. We've had people say, "Hey, we'd love to donate to you," and we're like, "We'd love it too."
we spend it all out of our own pocket. We have not made a dime. We've only spent money doing our.
Yeah, we're just having fun. That's it. Yep. So, all right, go ahead, Landon.
He talks about that people have to get counseling, but in the LDS church, when you sin, let's say that you do something that you feel guilty about. Something perfectly natural,
like your little factory.
What are you trying to say, Landon? What are you trying to
quit hinting, dude?
And you go into the bishop and you feel guilty because you've been taught that by that organization, and you go in and you're told that you get counseling and you're told that you should refrain from the sacrament, but you should continue to pay your tithing during this time to help you. You're paying 10% of your income to go and visit with a man to solve a problem that isn't a problem anywhere outside of religious groups. Playing with your little factory is perfectly normal and nobody charges you to talk about it. But in the church, you get to pay 10% and you get to go talk one-on-one with the counselor who then sends you to the LDS services for counseling for as a sex addict. And in addition to 10% of your income, you get to pay $95 an hour for counseling there with their counselor to overcome the very problem that they instituted. And we see a lot of LDS people going to counseling. We see a lot of members, spouses going to counsel one-on-one with the bishop over, am I allowed to do this in the bedroom with my husband? Because they feel guilty about it, or they don't feel that they can make that decision on their own. And yet they're paying 10% of their income for a problem that no one has a problem with other than the religious context from which you came from. You begin to question if it's right. And so you seek counsel.
And I will say everybody is a porn addict, and there are many groups that charge money that you are referred to, once you're labeled that. Many groups.
Yeah, and these are grown, mature adults.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So we absolutely see that same thing on the other side. So this is a ridiculous argument, but let's go to the revenue cycle, because this is just this just makes absolutely no sense. But Carrie, you want to read this, and we'll describe the cycle here after Carrie reads this, where he kind of describes how this cycle works.
That looks like a interesting cycle, all right. Okay, LDS critics intentionally crush innocent members' faith with massive volumes of sensation. Did Stephen Smoot write this? With sensationalized videos and podcasts that contain so many half-truths. Boy, they're projecting here. And so much misinformation that unsuspecting members feel betrayed by the church and feel everything they have been taught was a lie. I will testify to that. Yes. Or no, sorry. I'm supposed to keep reading. They are understandably confused, angry, and overwhelmed. This is an act of self-appointed heroism. The critic runs to their rescue with compassionate, in quotes, offers of help by pushing even more videos, quotes, more money, offering conferences/seminars, more money, and providing one-on-one coaching, more money, all the while soliciting their new recruits for donations, more money, and selling ex-Mormon products, more money. They then convince their victims they are somehow better off with gut-wrenching lost faith, strained family relationships, and the fellowship of other church members trying their best to be Christ-like. The member ultimately denounces their faith and shares their new, quote, knowledge, unquote, with others, which starts the self-perpetuating cycle all over again. You notice how, just like the church leaders, it's always our fault. They always blame everybody else, don't they?
Yep, it's someone else's fault. And that's the big thing we noticed on this cycle is, you notice there's no entrance point on this thing. And for those that
how do you get into the cycle?
Yep, you just magically appear in the cycle because they produce videos. You sit in this cycle, and that leads to all of these horrible things happening, which I don't understand. On the bottom, YouTube pays critics for views.
Well, and I guess we should describe this for those of you, because we're in audio format. It's basically like a flow chart. There's no entrance or exit. It's just a circle going around with all these things that Carrie just read. And in the middle, it all leads to money for the, a post-Mormon thought leader. But it's just a round and around affinity loop. But the key thing is there's no way in. It doesn't give any indication of how anyone finds themselves if they just wake up in the cycle one day. Of course, I believe the way into the cycle is you're sitting in Sunday school. You hear something unusual. You look in the gospel topics essay. You look at church materials. You ask people. You basically don't get answers, as we've discussed before. And then you go looking for something else. And of course, I disavow this entire interpretation of this cycle. But because you can find answers without any part of this cycle whatsoever. You can participate with your own free will. But yeah, they do not acknowledge any part that the church might play in putting someone into this spiral of looking for answers.
And you then get on the internet and look up FAIR and get your testimony blown out of the water. Now, FAIR is the organization I helped found.
That's
and
right.
They took a real bad left turn, and I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't stand how they were going. And so I dodged out. And how many people, and without exaggeration, this has gone up into the thousands now. I've heard from hundreds of them who say, I went to FAIR and it destroyed my testimony. Now, this is a church helped organization as well, even though it is nonprofit, as we'll see. But this, Landon said, YouTube pays critics for views. YouTube pays the church for their views too, if they've got the ad.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. If they've got
YouTube is non-discriminatory. If you make the content and people watch it, they will pay you. It's an algorithm. It has nothing to do with what they're making it into.
And what they don't show is that many people don't ever even get into the podcast or into this. They leave the church without participating in this cycle at all. And
exactly. I know so many people that have, in fact, we just talked to someone yesterday. They found their way out through church approved sources. They'd never even heard of John DeLynn. They'd never even heard, sorry, Carrie, of the Backyard Professor. There are many people like that. After the fact, usually looking for community, I find, is how they arrive at it. But they've already learned all they need to learn and made the decision to step away. And this has nothing to do with it. There are so many, but that's not an acceptable reason to be in this cycle. So,
and as we said, there's thousands of people who watch this and never make a donation at all. They watch it, they learn from it, and they walk away from it without ever making a donation to any of these organizations.
Or going to a conference or having one-on-one, just like any organization, there's always another level. Where have we heard of another organization where there's a level that you pay more to get higher? I mean, it's just in my mind somewhere. But no, you can I know, I'm sorry, I'm very facetious, but of course you can participate at higher levels as you can in any organization if that is something that you want. But for most people, they enjoy content and they don't even donate. They might not even know that a donation would be something that's expected.
Possible.
So I'll be honest, I've never donated. Let's just say that.
Other than to Mormonish, all your time and money.
Well, yes, all my waking hour and every single fiber of my being. I
was going to say, listen, I've been back making videos. I mean, I made over 1,000 apologetic videos. I know the amount of work it takes, and seeing the quality of videos and materials you guys have been making, the heck you're not making any donations. Time is a donation, and I mean the effort, but in a way, though, you guys, isn't this kind of rather refreshing to be able to help people see enough information to be able to weigh the pros and cons? Because we know we all came from Mormonism, man. We don't get the full picture or both sides of the picture. So
it's informed consent. You've got to have the information and then you can make the decision. I would never hold anyone back if they learned what they learned and said, you know what, I'm happier doing this. I would say, wonderful. I just would hope that people would be able to know and hope to help people know if they'd like to take advantage of that. That's
now understand that this other one over here on the right, member is emotionally impacted, feels betrayed, lied to, distances from church and God. Now, that is not, I'm here to tell you from experience, that is not us causing that feeling of betrayal. Information that we are presenting does not cause people to feel betrayed unless they're needing answers and their church hasn't provided it. Where that betrayal is coming from is we have been lied to from the church. And we've got, unfortunately, we have a mountain of evidence to show just that. And so, and I make a big whoop-de-doo about my Backyard Professor Responds video. Sometimes I'll only make them 2 minutes long. Sometimes I'll make them 2 hours long. But I do and did and still do somewhat. I feel betrayed because This church, being the one and only true living church on the planet, should be truthful. It is a betrayal to deceive. If you want to stop we post-Mormon intellectual leaders from broadcasting our information, making our videos and podcasts, holding conferences, etc., you can kill us in the bud immediately by telling the truth. If the church was truthful, I wouldn't have a reason to be making my videos. I can't grasp that the church can't grasp that. You want to stop us? It's so easy. Tell the truth. And I'll quit. I'll have no reason to do this.
Yep.
There it is. Well, Landon made his own. Oh, should we show this one first?
Yeah, I made my own chart, but yeah, Rebecca, do you want to explain this?
Yeah, I talked about the Kyle McKay church historian talk earlier, and it was a talk about not looking for answers, but he made these incredible statements during this talk, which is another reason I think a lot of podcasters wanted to talk about it, where he kept talking about there are compelling reasons to doubt, despite these compelling reasons. And so today I went through and I went through the transcript of the talk, and I just took out every place where he talked like this, and it's everywhere. Compelling reasons to doubt, perplexing questions, compelling reasons again, the existence of reasons to doubt, appealing, unbelievable argument. I mean, I almost feel like he might be a double agent. He just said, and I would like to have been in the audience with the kids going, huh? You know, and of course, then he talked about none of that matters. You know, you just have to have faith and feelings. But he really made sure that all of us knew that there were mistakes and reasons to doubt and good arguments, solid arguments. It was just funny to read through everything. It was very interesting. So, and again, that speaks to how you get into that cycle. There are these reasons, you look for answers, and then you find maybe some outside sources. So I just thought that was
said it that often, huh? That much. I guess.
Yeah, that much. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was all over the place. So
but here's Landon's revenue cycle. I love it.
Our own revenue cycle that's a little different than his, that shows where you come in at, and you come in up at this upper left-hand corner, which reads, member finds church promoted narrative is not true through study of church material. That leads the member to seek answers from church leaders and books. Of course, the response to that is the member is counseled to pay tithing, and the member is isolated from family and friends. This leads the member into a faith crisis. The member then finds a podcast or some other source of information. But when they do that, they also find community. They have lost because they've been isolated. They now find community within that podcast or within that Thrive group or within that post-Mormon group that they're able to get together and find community.
Book clubs.
Thank you, Carrie. That's right.
Then the member begins to find true answers to the questions they've been asking. And sometimes they find those answers are not the answers they thought, but they find answers. And because of that, they're grateful, and they make a voluntary contribution, not based on that their family will not be together forever if they don't make the contribution, that they can't go to a wedding or any other of these forced ideas.
Yeah.
It's a voluntary, I want to help. These people help me. They're giving me information that I'm finding helpful. I'm going to marriage on a tightrope. I'm going to somewhere that helps my mixed faith marriage that I could not get help with in the church. And these organizations, these post-Mormon organizations, are helping me. And I voluntarily am contributing my money to them. And what you find out is that they're not contributing as much as they were because the member stops attending church. They stop paying tithing. They stop wearing their garments. And as a result, they have Sunday off, they buy a boat, they get a bikini, and they take an awesome trip to Lake Powell. And that's the cycle that we like to follow. And
that's of course, the true cycle.
Once they take the trip to Lake Powell, they start listening to Mormonish podcasts, and then all donations stop because we don't have a donation button.
Yeah, it stops there. No matter what their intention, it's over because we don't know how to take a donation. So
meanwhile, up at the top, cycle. other members see the fun vacation and they begin to question.
And they enter the cycle. That's
and
right.
enter the cycle again.
I love this. This is so smart,
Now, what
Landon.
I
love
want to
it.
know is, when are you two going to take me to Lake Powell? That's the one part I haven't done yet.
As
Field
soon as you get a
trip.
bikini, Carrie.
That's
Oh, yikes.
that's where you're supposed to say, yeah, baby, right?
I don't know.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
All right. We're back.
All right.
We're gonna
That's right.
do a couple of these.
Yeah,
So
let's speed up. For those of you, I was kidding about reaching a John DeLynn level Mormon stories. We're gonna keep going here. Okay. This is for Mormon critics, the shock factor sells. So it says there are hundreds of examples of videos made by Mormon stories and many others that are clearly sensationalized and intended to shock members into viewing. They can be offensive, shocking, or wildly inaccurate as long as people view it. But they all have the same goal: to keep the viewership, which increases the revenue, and to cause a faith crisis, which also increases the revenue. As David Snell put it, they create a doubt bomb of 1,000 arrows, hoping something will stick. A few examples of the thumbnails of these overly sensationalized videos, and these are included on this website.
They don't have any of mine up
Yeah,
there?
you didn't make the cut. You're not sensational enough, Carrie.
I'm going to have to start getting sensationalized, man.
You got to get sensationalized. That's right. So let's see. The tyranny of Mormon patriarchal blessings. That's one. Mormonism electro-thought, the shock torture, how Mormonism divides families, and Mormon church headquarters exposed. So these are just some titles for topics that they believe are going to cause a faith crisis.
And it's true that only post-Mormon community does this type of shock factor selling to get views on their website. You would never find that in one of theirs. Wait a minute. The more faith they shake, the more money they make.
Nothing sensational about that.
Nothing sensational there. Okay, enough said about that one.
Okay.
We'll move on. Carrie, you want to read this one?
Moving on to Carrie's organization here. Let's see what they say.
There is another newer nonprofit organization similar to Mormon Stories called Mormon Discussions, Inc. They have only been a nonprofit for a few years, but their numbers are similar to Mormon Stories. Oh, well, that's a lie. When it was starting out, they currently have over 1,300 videos on YouTube. I'm grateful to, and I'm proud to say, 160 of those are little old me.
There you go.
That's what, 160. I'm over 10%. Yeah, baby, I've contributed my tithing. The difference is Mormon Discussions added another revenue stream of selling ex-Mormon products, some of which are extremely offensive, both on their website and on their YouTube channel. They are growing rapidly and, in fact, more than doubled their contributions from 2020 to 2021 and 2021 is when I got on, so I did not contribute to that doubling, but I have helped contribute to the tripling of subscriptions in the year and a half I've been there. I'm a part of that, just a small part, but there are yet other critics on YouTube that are not designated as nonprofit organizations, but nonetheless produce large numbers of videos, and therefore we can assume YouTube revenue. They include Exmo Lex, Zelf on a Shelf, which I think is fabulous, Zelf on a Shelf, Cult of Consciousness, Nuance Ho, who is absolutely hilarious. She really is, and others. In each case, in addition to being paid for videos, they solicit donations aggressively and or sell ex-Mormon products. While some of them may have other reasons for being critics, in every case, money is certainly a contributing factor. Duh. I wonder if that's true in the Mormon church, too.
Never. And when I read that one line about what does it say, extremely offensive products, I was talking to RFM today and I'm like, what do you guys have on there? What's in your store that's so offensive? And he goes, I don't know, coffee mugs. I mean, and I looked through it, they're mostly just the logos. I know, I was like, what are you?
I mean, if it doesn't if it doesn't have Angel Moroni, it's offensive, you know.
It's offensive. Yeah. So I didn't see anything that, of course, maybe my sensibilities are tainted a little bit, but yeah, he didn't know either. He's like, coffee mugs, maybe? I don't know.
I
So,
haven't seen anything yet. So
yeah, everyone go to the Mormon discussion store and see what you can find. So,
yeah, let's get more offensive product out there.
that's right.
Well, I can't think of anything more offensive than what the church produces. And that is they have Deseret Management Corporation, among other for-profit organizations. It is a church that has for-profit organizations, just like a post-Mormon website, but instead of selling coffee mugs, they're selling media. They're selling books at Deseret Books and all the things there. They're selling life insurance. They're selling $235 million in revenue worth of product using the Mormon Church's name and having those members who will believe or who feel that they're going to be honestly treated if they join in with one of these revenue streams. And this doesn't even include the MLMs that all the Mormons join into revenue stream. So there's a lot of side businesses in addition to what the church itself is making off of these things. In fact, Rebecca,
I was thinking of garments. I was thinking
Yeah,
garments are so expensive actually compared to what else you could wear. Temple clothes, if you rent temple clothes, you go every time and you have to rent things that you need for a mission, temple dresses. There's such, industry built up around being a Mormon. I mean, and I'm sure there's many more.
Millions
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Construction companies that, there's all that, theory out there about how construction companies are associated with lots of the church projects. There are people like my parents who like to go to businesses owned by LDS people. They'll only go to an LDS dentist or a doctor or a mechanic. And so you can't tell me there's not industry built up around the LDS handle, if you see LDS on it.
Hey, Landon, is this an annual income?
I believe the revenue for Deseret Management was an annual revenue of
May I say something to the church? If you would pay me just 10% of that 1 year's worth, I'll stop making videos.
We would do it for 5.
Three.
I will.
Now we're caving.
I will write a contract.
Stop it, everybody.
I promise. I will write a contract, and you'll make it back in just a month.
Where is your integrity, Carrie? We've got to stay the course and go for it.
You're saying
you're right.
I'm in it for the money.
It's true.
So
we've been labeled as for the money. You're right. You're right.
But we will not stop selling our Mormonish mugs.
That's right. Our Mormonish mug, which we do not have a merch site, so we really can't even sell them. No one has. Yeah, we don't have a merch site.
That
we
is
need a
very
post-Mormon
offensive.
teenager
That
to
is
help
very
us.
offensive to me. That's offensive stuff you're selling right there.
Oh, that's right. Ooh.
It shouldn't be Mormonish. You're giving Satan the victory. It should be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints-ish.
Ah, that's right.
Okay,
right,
I'll go ahead and read
slide?
this one.
Okay.
We're to donations, LDS Critics solicitations for donations. Almost all critics' channels and websites make a strong appeal for donations from their audience, claiming that the contributions can assist the members in dealing with their crisis of faith. The irony is that the doubt-inducing misinformation in their videos is usually the root cause of such crisis in the first place. Generally, the only real aid offered to the member is the production of more videos, which means additional revenue for the critic, leaving the member to deal with the trauma of lost faith and strained family relationships. Again, they keep trying to scare us with this strained family relationships. Don't leave the church. Don't look at these websites or you'll lose that family relationship. That's just a vague threat that they're using right here. But you look at these $10 a month that they're asking for, $5 a month.
And these are, to explain to our listeners, these are donations asked for by post-Mormon thought leaders. Is that right?
That's
and were
correct.
These included on the website?
Which you may choose to click on or not.
Right. But did they put these on the website or did you add these?
This is that.
Okay.
Yes,
this is their example of $10 a month, these are these egregious donations that people are requesting, $5 a month.
That's a whole lot less than
Yeah,
percent of
this
your
is,
income per
does
month.
that say $2 a month? Yeah,
$2 a month. Yep.
I'm going to say you don't have a leg to stand on if you're going to criticize asking for donations and what you promise to give in return. No leg to stand on.
Absolutely correct. And I might point out that the Answering LDS Critics website does have a donate button that you can donate to.
No, come on.
Yes, they do.
How did they figure that out?
Oh my
They're
God.
smarter than us. That's that. Their arguments do carry more weight because they figured out
They're
the donate
smarter.
button that
They
we have.
figured out the
Oh,
donate
dude.
button.
Okay, what that's oh man, that just kills everything they're trying to do here.
Yep.
This is all ad hominem anyway. They can't refute our evidences, so they attack the
So they
revenue.
attack that you're
Yeah.
asking for a donation while they themselves are asking for a donation.
Yeah.
Wow, from
Oh.
active members who are also required to pay 10% of their income, fast
On
offerings,
top.
pay for
Yeah.
missions, and they say that they offer
Buy
nothing.
garments.
Videos. What does the church offer? They offer videos, one-on-one counseling, but they offer salvation, which they never have to deliver on.
Yeah.
They can make the promise, but they never deliver on it. And for it, they ask 10% plus your time, plus your mission kids, and paying for missions and donations and fast offerings. So they have no leg to stand on.
Well,
anyone who looks at this argument just has to go.
it falls
You've got
apart.
to-
And I would say time is money to them because they take your donated hours, no matter what you're doing, being cleaning a toilet or, whatever you do to donate time in the church, and they turn that into an hourly salary. And then they consider that and report that as charitable giving. So if you work 10 hours at the church and they gave you a $20 an hour, that's what they said you made, they would claim that they had, given $200 in charitable giving. So they do turn it into money. They are taking your donation because they're using your hours. So
that should be every post-Mormon website's motto. We may ask for a donation, but we don't make you clean the toilets.
I love it. Let's make it ours right now. Although
Very
I do need
good.
someone to clean my toilet right now. I spend so much time on Mormonish. I literally
You have it there. Mormonish
Too
will
much
take cleaning
information.
Rebecca's toilet in lieu of a $10 donation.
maybe, okay, any one of our viewers, if your last name is between A and G on Saturday morning, it is your turn to come to my house and please clean.
Oh.
Next week, it'll be G through. All right.
All right. So let's go to this one. I'm gonna have Carrie read this one if you wouldn't mind, Carrie.
Okay, thankfully, there are several individuals who have set up foundations to defend the church. One of the most prominent is the Interpreter Foundation, which is also a nonprofit. The Interpreter Foundation's total contributions for 2020 were $862,051, even higher than Mormon Stories. However, there is a significant difference. There are no salaries for anyone in the Interpreter Foundation, none. All proceeds go to defending critics' claims. Unlike Mormon Stories, it is completely voluntary. Also, unlike Mormon Stories, it is in the truest sense a nonprofit. Note the compensation circle below and compare compensation to Mormon Stories.
Okay, well, this is quite the revelation here.
Yeah.
The Interpreter Foundation, who nobody has heard of.
That's run by Daniel C. Peterson, the former head editor of the Farms Review of
Farms.
Books.
Yep, he moved from Farms, which went. I shouldn't say that term, but they went.
He got fired.
He got fired. They went
And
tits
it
up. I was
got
gonna say.
It-
Are you trying to say he bought the farm?
He bought the farm. He lost the farm.
he lost.
And moved in and started Interpreter Foundation, which has various websites, but somehow they make more money than John DeLyn's 60 million views on YouTube. And then they want to point out, and look how many board of director members they have that all make $0. Again, this is completely dishonest because the Interpreter Foundation does not have full-time employees. They have contributors. And most of those contributors are BYU professors. A lot of them, I went to their website, and you can go to their website and look up their members. A lot of them are BYU professors who get a salary for writing these. things. So they are compensated for them. They're simply not compensated by the Interpreter Foundation. They write it, they're paid for by the church, and they submit it, and it's used on their site. So that doesn't, it's not even a fair comparison. And second, they're comparing board, board directors here, and you can see how many of them there are. Open Stories also has board directors who don't make any money. The person that makes the money is the person who full-time job is to produce the content.
Right.
These people spend 2 to 8 hours a week, just like a church calling, doing this work. And that's why they're not, that's why they can afford not to be compensated for it. They're also, if you go to their website, lawyers, doctors, business leaders. So somebody who is a therapist or a working Joe who wants to have his voice heard, who can't afford to donate and set this up, this kind of stuff up, can do so on a podcast. It takes a $50 microphone and a computer, and you can do a podcast and let your voice be heard. And there's no reason that everyone shouldn't be heard. It shouldn't matter what your qualifications are. But we're going to look at this Interpreter Foundation a little bit more later. This is what the Interpreter Foundation consists of. They do have FAIR, Witness for the Book of Mormon Central, Book of Mormon Research, and the LDS Perspectives broadcast. But amazingly, we just heard them talk about all the things that the Critic Mormon websites do and that. And what were some of those things that they did? Let's see.
Podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Videos. They had videos. Yeah.
Oh,
articles. Yeah.
Articles.
No.
Oh, foundation conferences.
Events. They had events.
Events. Wow.
And I think we need to point out the reason that we're delving into and trying to understand the Interpreter Foundation is because it is held up as the shining beacon of how something like this should be run, whereas Open Stories or Mormon Discussions is held up as, the Antichrist. So this is the only reason we're delving into this organization, because they have brought it up over and over as an example of how things should be. Yet we're seeing here that it's very similar, the same kinds of things. Yes, Carrie?
I didn't want to interrupt your great trend of thought.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure that people understand that we didn't just randomly pick something. And I don't even mean go after. I mean, just explain, because its own website has held it up as something, that's good and true. So we want to understand that and the reasons.
To hold up the interpreter as the way things should be done is simply ridiculous, because it is their own church who makes them feel guilty for making money on their own on religion, while the church makes tens of billions of dollars quarterly. If these guys want to brag about working for free, that's wonderful. But I'm proud of the content I'm producing. I don't mind asking for donations for it. I work my butt off doing a boatload of research, which is entirely enjoyable for me. Some books cost me $200. Some books cost me $2. But I have no shame in asking for a donation. This appears to me to be the Mormon psychology of shaming, and I don't buy it for a moment, because there's no shame in producing a quality product. Don't we all pay for a quality product? Yes, we do. I will not hang my head and think, oh my gosh, I'm practicing priestcraft. I'm a sinner. I don't buy that noise, because it's not. It is a business. If that offends you, Mormons, look at the church. It's the corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a business. It's a nonprofit, tax-free, religious business. They have investment companies. They play the stock market. Is that a church? No, it's a business. It's a tax-free business. I will not be shamed by admitting, sure, if you wouldn't mind helping donate to the cause of me filling in all the stuff that they've left out so that you can get a more accurate context. If that blows your faith out of the water like it does mine, who's the one that whitewashed the history? Not me, not Mormonish, not a Radio Free Mormon and Bill Reel and John Dehlin and Nemo. So I think this is entirely ridiculous, and I am not shamed, and I'm certainly not ashamed to say I deliver a pretty good product, and I'm glad of it, and I'm not quitting. So that's just my 2 cents.
That's a mic drop moment. And that's exactly what I think we were both trying to say, but you said it perfectly. That's absolutely right. Great content, compensation, and no one here in this community has ever cut anything out of a history, hid it in a vault, and scotch taped it back in. That is not how we operate.
I mean, that's a disrespect for historical sources.
It is.
Crying out loud. That's criminal.
I agree.
So anyway.
Well, Carrie, I want you to read this one because you were a founding member of FAIR, which is another one that they point out as a stellar way that you should conduct apologetics.
Yeah, another significant entity is Foundation for Apologetic Information and Research, FAIR, another nonprofit. Total 2020 revenue is $163,247. Total executive compensation, 0. Once again, completely voluntary. He says that as if that's a good thing, and completely nonprofit. Salaries are circled under compensation, 0, 0, 0. And he says that as if that's a good thing. I look at this now and I say, well, yeah, ding-a-lings, that's your problem, not ours. You deserve to be paid for all the work you're doing. I know how much work goes into FAIR. I helped found it, and I was involved with it for several years up front. I get it, but this is not bragging rights. This is not making you more religious and holy than any of the rest of us who are legitimately making a living. We are earning our bread by the sweat of our brow. I can quote the scripture to you and show it to you where that's legit if you want, but this is trying to shame us some more. I don't buy it. This is hokey. This is hokey.
Gary, FAIR has, according to this, $163,000 in revenue in 2020. How do they get that revenue?
Well, now I have heard, and others have done some research, and if your audience wants the evidence, I would advise you go to Discuss Mormonism, the message board run by Dr. Shades. They have researched into this, and FAIR is supplemented by a entity called the More Good Foundation. And I do believe Interpreter is also supplemented by the More Good Foundation. Now, Daniel Peterson said for decades that he never received a penny for being the main editor of the Farms Review of Books. Someone actually uncovered his tax returns from, I can't remember how it happened, but he made at least $20,000 a year. Now, granted, that's not making a living, but he was a professor of Arabic at BYU for decades. I happen to know they make 6 digits easy. Daniel Peterson flies all over the cotton picking world every month. He's spending tens of thousands of dollars a month world traveling. I know the man is loaded with money, but for the blatant lie, for the sake of a phony image of being holy because I'm not being paid for my defending the religion, is pure hokum, and it is deceptive because he was paid. If you work at BYU, you're paid. I don't know where this money goes to, but if it does go back, the $163,000, if it does go back into equipment for FAIR, big screens so that they can show their slides and attract their people to what? conferences, which what makes them more money?
money.
Well, they don't take it. No, but they buy the computers, they buy the screens, they buy the computer technicians to program stuff, they rent, they have the money to rent the great big auditoriums so that hundreds can come and strengthen their testimony. They have handouts, they have a bookstore that they sell books for money, etc., etc., etc. So these guys may be claiming zero as if that's a holy thing, but they are in it for the money. I know we scrambled for years up front, just begging for it. We were all back then genuinely volunteers. Our first fair conference, 1999, was held in California. I drove my own car on my own gas with my own research to help found and present at that first fair conference, at the second fair conference, at the third fair. The second fair conference, we grew a brain and decided to have it in Utah so that it was a much shorter trip for most of us. And then since then, they found a permanent place in Utah. But I know money's an issue. Is that something to be ashamed of? I don't see where this comes from, except for the LDS leadership shaming psychology, and I don't buy it anymore. So this is not a noble thing, this gentleman. What they're showing us, and I apologize if this is offensive, this is foolish. This is just silly. There's no way I would do that. Bill Reel insisted to me when I started. I told him, I don't care about the money. I just love doing it. He goes, oh, no. He said, we'll be happy to pay you. But it is based on a per view thing and all that jazz. You know, if anybody wants to trade me salaries, I promise I am so underpaid, which is irrelevant. But I don't take zero. And I'm not going to hang my head in shame for being paid. It's all good. That's my take.
It's more good.
More good.
More.
That's right.
More good. Maybe I better write to them and ask them for some help.
I think you should. And I think
After
we should.
all, there
clarify
must
that.
be opposition in all things. So I'm.
Oh, we learned that from
fulfilling
Kyle
the
McCabe.
scripture. I'm
That's right.
fulfilling the scripture.
Well, and we're just trying to say it's all right. Make money. Everyone can make money. There is nothing wrong with running a successful business and putting out great content for your audience. It may not be everyone's audience, but that doesn't mean the other audience can say you shouldn't be able to put out content. It's fine.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yep.
Well,
All
Rebecca,
right.
I'm going to ask you to read the summary. This is
Okay.
quite upsetting. But after this, we're going to have some fun. We're going to pull up Interpreter's 990 form, and we're going to put the same scrutiny on it that they put on Mormon Stories, knowing here that Interpreter Foundation is the gold standard for 990s. So
because we know a guy who can get us tax returns.
This summary is the summary.
It's all public domain.
This summary is from the website. This isn't our summary. This is their summary.
No, we've gone through the whole website here. So this is their summary. And the first line is the one that I had to highlight, and then I scratched it out, and then I reprinted it, and then I scratched. I just could not stand it because it reminds me, can you please just talk about the mote in your eye and not looking at the beam in someone else's? I mean, this is just
you got that backwards.
Did I get it backwards? Yeah, I probably did. Is it what's bigger, a beam or a mote? I thought about this earlier when I was going to say it. You have a beam is bigger, so you have a mote in your eye and you're not seeing the beam. Okay, got it. No, you're looking at a mote
in your own eye.
And a mote.
The point is, you can't see what you're doing. I've heard that when you step away from the church, you kind of forget the scriptural references. I think it's happening to me. So
Well, me, I'm studying the Greek stuff now, so I'm not forgetting it. I'm increasing it. So
You're increasing. Yeah, I'm increasing a lot of things, but some of those other little things, I'm like, yeah, beam moat, who knows? Anyway, maybe we'll cut that part out, although it is kind of fun. Okay,
no,
I'm going to
it's
read
fun.
the
It's
I'm going to
so
read
good.
the summary. Okay, it would be unethical for a doctor to infect you with a disease simply so he could treat you and collect a fee. Sounds
Ooh.
familiar. But LDS critics are infecting members with misinformation via videos and other content, and then, quote, helping, close quote, them by sending them to other videos, which they get paid for, or charging $200 an hour for coaching sessions to help. Every time they say the word help, they put it in quotes, or soliciting for money so they can even make more videos and more money, or getting them to attend a conference and pay more money. The numbers make it clear that these critics are causing trauma so they can heroically solve it. A complete and obvious conflict of interest, and that is bolded by the site. Is there any truth to all their claims? And here's kind of a Kyle McKay line. Some of their claims originate in truth. Our early church leaders were human, just like you and just like me. But when their human frailties are reported by LDS critics, they sensationalize them by adding poor assumptions and sometimes outright lies.
Yeah, she really was only a few months earlier than 15 years old.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, read your original sources, everyone. No need to sensationalize, none whatsoever. As this page has clearly demonstrated, LDS critics have every motivation to say anything they can to get you to doubt your testimony, but literally everything they say needs to be examined with a skeptical eye. Neil A. Maxwell said, studying the church through the eyes of its defectors is like interviewing Judas to understand Jesus. Critics are people too, and they are children of God, as were the money changers in the temple during Jesus's time. Bump. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. It's time though that, like Jesus, we drive our modern day money changers, critics, in case people aren't understanding this metaphor, out of our hearts and our minds and place our focus squarely on Jesus Christ. He is, after all, the master healer. And then there's a big button, it's not on here, that says, how do I research the critics' claims more thoroughly? And the button takes you to information about the Book of Mormon. Full circle.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. Oh boy. Okay.
I know.
That's
So
Bitcoin silly.
now let's have a little bit of fun here.
I've been having fun since we
I've
started.
been having fun.
Oh, well, good.
I don't know if our viewers are having any fun, but we're
Well,
having
they
fun.
are.
Well,
They-
I
I
hope so.
decided I was able to go and look through help from one of our friends who's a financial professor. He helped me find where you can find these 990 forms on the IRS website. So I was able to find the interpreter organization, which according to this website is the gold standard. And so we'll go ahead and we'll compare what we'll put it under the same scrutiny that he just put under Mormon Stories, and we'll see if it survives the scrutiny and if it's a fair evaluation. So the 2019 was the newest one I could find on these on interpreter website. So the first thing that I noticed as I looked at it was you could see what their current year, and in 2019 they made more than they made in 2020. They brought in $1.1 million in contributions and grants. Not bad.
Yeah, Daniel C. Peterson was working on his film, The Witnesses, his Witnesses film. And so he was getting quite a bit of contribution. So, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, let's look at the prior year. The prior year, they made $359,000.
So, see, you want to make money, start offering to make films because that's a huge increase.
Evidently, that was what's that, a 300% increase? So Mormon Stories, we heard it was a whopping 22.9%. Interpreter Foundation is 300% increase in 1 year. Not 22.
That's bigger than whopping.
Yeah, that's a whopping number. But look at the numbers prior to that. If we go down, if we go down, we can actually see down here on page 16, we can see how much money they made over the years. Oops, I went past it. Here we see it. In 2015, they made $214,000. 2016, $157,000. 2017, $134,000. They're actually going down in the same years that Mormon Stories is going up. 359, all of a sudden 1.1 million. Wow.
Wow.
Talk about a jump. I don't know how you make that kind of a jump in 1 year. And then the funny part is their expenses went up just about at the same rate, as we can see that their expenses in that same year was over $1 million. So somehow they produced something that cost $1 million. And maybe you're right, Carrie. Maybe it's a movie. Maybe they.
Yeah, it was his witness filming. Yeah, he had to pay the directors, and there's people on Shade's message board who
Wait a minute. The director got paid?
He had to pay people that were working and helping him create content? But that's unconscionable.
Isn't that horrible?
Well,
everyone should have volunteered. Everyone.
Wait a minute. If that's true, we should be able to see that in the tax form, right?
That's right, because you have to list what you paid out. You have to list who you paid and how they paid it. It's another schedule that you have to.
Yeah, fortunately on page 10, we get to say what our expenses are. And here's the list of our expenses. Grants, zero, grants, benefits paid to or for members, nothing. Compensation of current officers, directors, trustees, and nope, nothing there. Compensation not included above, nope, not there. Other salaries and wages, no, they didn't pay any salary.
Wait. This is interpreter, right?
This is interpreter. Pension
plan.
They're
basically not telling anyone what they paid. Yeah, but
here it is.
There it is. Sorry.
Other fees for services, non-employee services. Other $1.1 million almost.
Other
in other, which we don't know what it is.
I've never seen anything more transparent than that.
You don't
$1
get
million on a line that says other.
Was an expense under other.
Boy, they've taken a lesson from the church with this SEC scandal, haven't they?
Absolutely.
There should be another schedule, though, Landon. There should be another schedule that they have submitted to the IRS detailing what they paid.
Oh,
doesn't exist.
Yeah, you're right. It says here, if line 11G, which is this line here,
other, they should list it out there.
Exceeds 10% of line 25, column A amount,
which it does because they listed their entire donation there
on Schedule O. Okay. There's 25. It's $1 million, so that's clearly over 25%. Right.
And it's their entire grant and donation. So basically, what we're saying is that because they listed it as other, and it's more than 10% of their overall gross donation, they need to itemize it out what they spent it on another
Schedule O, which
it should be right there on Schedule O.
What's it say
so now we'll get the answer.
No documents available to the public.
How do they get away with this?
How convenient.
Where did they
are the IRS agents Mormons too? We're seeing this?
It seems to be the same tax accountants everywhere. I don't know how they're getting away with this.
To McConkey, didn't they?
But they're supposed to list on Schedule O, break out what those expenses are, and yet they don't make those available to the public.
I'll tell you what, this is gold. I'm going to run over to Shade's message board when this video comes out, and I'm going to tell Dr. Scratch, hey, check out what Landon Brophy found, man. I can't believe this. So Dan Peterson is also not listing where the money went, except in other. Okay, Dr. Peterson.
Well, a couple of those expenses,
I'm not going to try to falsely accuse you.
No.
But where the hell did the $1 million go?
I think it's a clerical error, a simple clerical error. That's
the IRS won't let him get away with stuff like that.
But
I know, but it's a mystery.
I know. They had $93,000 in fundraising expenses to come up with the $1 million. So somebody was doing something for $93,000 to raise this $1 million. So I don't know who it was. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm just saying
No.
that's what they're reporting.
Right. And again, we're just looking at this because this was held up through this entire article as the gold standard of how we should all behave when it comes to disclosing our financials, how we should act. And we would invite any of our viewers to look this up. You could probably find it on the irs.gov site and do your own looking into it because, you know, we're not trained professionals. We may be missing something that's really obvious, and in which case we're being really facetious and snarky. We're trying not to be, but we thought it was very unusual. Yeah, we'd love anybody else's input on this.
Please, if there's any Mormons, if you Mormons who are watching this, I say this in all heartfelt sincerity. I'm truly amazed that the Interpreter Foundation, Bill Reel in Mormon Discussion Inc. could never do this, you guys. So please, if you know Dan Peterson and you can get the information on how does this work exactly, and then share it with me or share it through Mormonish, I would greatly appreciate it, because I'm going to be as charitable as I know how here, because I am trying to build bridges and have a clever dialogue. But I smell a rat. Something is grossly wrong here, you guys. If you guys as Mormons can't see this,
well,
your life's going to be real rough.
I would like to point out that the cash that they declared at the beginning of the year 2019, they had $528,000 in cash.
Okay.
Now, if you remember those years, they had 200,000, 100,000. That's almost 3 years worth of contributions that they had in cash. Yes. So they're clearly not using it. They're building a rainy day fund, maybe for when the Lord comes back and the critics are still criticizing Jesus after they've been burned up. They've got that rainy day fund.
That is a good point. They're still soliciting donations, although they do seem to have a surplus of donations.
Yeah, so, by the end of the year, they had $621,000 in cash at the end of. So it doesn't appear that they need all your donations, because they've got $600,000 in cash, which is more than John DeLynn revenued the entire year of 2020.
The entire time.
They have that in cash.
I'm here to tell you, in all honesty, that is $600,000 more than I've had after a year and a half of working, making podcasts.
That's right. And as you said, Landon, they don't need it, but the donors need the blessings that they get from giving the donation. I'm sorry, I'm being so facetious. It is just, it's confusing to me, and I'd love to know more about it. You know, I just like to present it as,
I would
look,
truly love to see this clarified, because
clarified. That's what I'm saying.
This just doesn't make sense. I'm sincere. This doesn't. Bill Reel could never get away with this, you guys. John DeLynn cannot get away with this. I don't see how the Interpreter Foundation can. Well, if this is the model to follow.
They did a Salt Lake Tribune article on John DeLynn when he made $500,000. Are they doing?
Where's the Tribune article on?
An article on when they make $1 million. And you could be right. This could be the movie year. And
it could be
rolling the movie donations into this organization.
But it should have been listed.
But
they should have told everybody. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
I mean,
I'm not claiming anyone's doing anything wrong. I'm simply, I pulled up. Our friend helped us pull up the IRS tax returns just like they did, so we could look at them. And this is what I found. So not accusing anyone of anything, not saying anyone did anything illegal.
I'm confused.
Simply saying
curious
that these numbers have way more questions to me than John DeLynn's podcast, where we knew exactly where it was going, that it was going to the content creator to create more content.
Yep.
And yet we don't see here where this money's going. And
and as a member of the Mormon Discussion Inc., I'm sincere. I'm adamant. We have to publicly post our information like this on the site. You think these guys are telling you the truth in the comparison? You come on over to Mormon Discussion Inc. and you look at how Bill Reel's doing it.
Yeah. Well, and Open Stories puts out
Open Stories,
3-hour videos about their financial
detailed expenditures. You come on over and look.
And it's on the website too. It's everywhere. very transparent. Yeah. So
Very,
interesting.
very fascinating discovery, you
I
guys.
know.
This is
It's
incredible.
very interesting.
Yeah, it just as we read that article, it just hurt because we know so many of the great people who do this content.
Yep.
We rub arms with them. We talk to them, daily basis, some of them. And it's just, we know the kind of people they are. We know their motivation, and it's nothing what was described in this article. And they are not greedy, motivated by money people. They need money to produce this kind of content. And there's very few who make a living with this. You could probably count them on one hand, the post-Mormons that can actually make a living doing this full time.
Yeah.
They're great people, and they really are concerned about the people who have no community. They have been estranged from their family, not because of their choice, but because they've left the church and the family has said, oh, we can't have anything to do with you, or our marriage is over, or what have you. People are hurt. And when you go to these things, you see people are hurting, and it is not the podcasters. It is not the thought leaders that are causing the pain. It's like you said, they were lied to. They're finding out the narrative that they were taught their entire life that they lived by has been torn out from under them, and they need a place to go. And these podcasts and the post-Mormon community provide that.
May I'm not trying to interrupt you.
Summary statement, Carrie. It's all you. Here we go.
Oh, well, I don't want to make the closing statement, but let me reassure you of another thing, that this website has not been honest in disclosing. I hate using that language, but folks, this information is on the Joseph Smith papers. It is the church who are finally coming out into the open, finally presenting the history they've been changing and hiding. And this is why both Rebecca and Landon, along with myself, we are doing this series of podcasts on the essays, the church essays, because those were produced because the church recognized people are leaving because they're saying we are being deceptive and dishonest. Well, we have to open up and be more honest. That's what brought out the church essays. That's what's brought out the Joseph Smith papers. This information that they say we are lying about, the members are discovering it on the Joseph Smith papers. The church sponsored. It's sponsored by the First Presidency. It's accepted by the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. We're not the ones producing the content. We're the ones taking the contextual truth the church is finally coming out with. And then we're saying, but how does that compare with what Joseph Smith said? And compared to what you said Joseph Smith said, and that I went on a mission for you and testified to your truthfulness, and I baptized people into this church, and I did it on your whitewashed history. Now you're telling me that the information I received a testimony of from the Holy Ghost was deceptive? How will the Holy Ghost testify to me it was deceptive? Can you not see where the betrayal is arriving from? It's not us. I will say it one more time for the record. If you want to shut me down, I will cease all activity in video production and podcasts. The way to do it is tell the truth. But I mean the whole truth. Not the whitewashed version, not the slick presentations, etc. Here's the other side of the coin. I don't believe I'm going to be exaggerating. If you think I am, please do share it with me, because I want to be correct here too. I can't find one Mormon podcaster or website that's giving us the full contextual truth yet. What do you think makes me produce so much content? Why do you think Rebecca and Landon have now jumped onto this? Because, and I'm not trying to speak for you two, they're not finding any Mormon sites that have the truth yet either. And this is based on what the church has started to come out with since 2015 when John Dehlin started to grow. And guess what? That was the year he was excommunicated. You're blaming us? Come on. Even that's not truthful. So that's my closing statement.
There it is. Very well said. No, that's exactly right. And I think, like you said, if you're looking for truth, there are such access to original sources now. Please go at those original sources and then find yourself some podcasters that you think are treating those original sources fairly and getting the information out. I mean, it's on all of us to look for truth where we can find it. And I would also say, to echo kind of what Landon said, with our associations, with all these wonderful podcasters and wonderful people who do care about the people that listen and their viewers and their listeners. And in many cases, these podcasters are lifelines and lifesavers. Literally, there are stories, lifelines and lifesavers, and everyone is just trying to do the best they can. So I hope everybody can take this episode of Mormonish in the spirit that it was meant. And I encourage everybody to go look at the website. What's the name of it again, Landon? Finding. Now I forgot the name of the
Answering LDS Critics.
Answering LDS Critics. It's a brand new site, and I'm sure there'll be other information on it. So like I said, go straight at truth, look at the website itself, leave us comments. What do you think about the content there? What do you think about what we said about the content? Also, Carrie brought up, we are doing on the Backyard Professor, Mormonish, Landon and I with Carrie, a series on the gospel topic essays. Now, we've already done 2 installments of this that can be found on Carrie's website and on YouTube. We've talked about the history of the gospel topic essays. And then we just last Thursday did an episode on the first gospel topic essay, which is, Are Mormons Christian? And these are absolutely fascinating to go through. We put a lot of time and research into it, and it's really informational and entertaining to watch live. Carrie's audience and his live chat is the craziest I've ever been a part of before. So our next one is coming out this Sunday. That'll be the 14th at 6 p.m. And because it's Mother's Day, we are going to kind of go out of order a little bit, and we're going to tackle the Mother in Heaven essay. And boy, there is some stuff in there. Our minds are being blown as we are researching this. So please, everybody, tune into that. So don't forget to like and subscribe Mormonish. We would tell you to donate, but we don't have a donate button. So just think good thoughts our direction. And you can hit the notification bell so you can be made aware when new episodes come out. And as I said again, please comment. We absolutely do read the comments. We pay attention. We want to know what you guys agree with, what you don't agree with. We want feedback because we're here for you, trying to produce things that we think you're interested in and that will do you, give you some benefit in your life. And that's what we're all about. So that being said, everybody, thank you, Carrie. Carrie, you are wonderful. It was amazing that you came on. Thank you, Landon, for all of your incredible research into this. And we will say goodbye for now from Mormonish. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.